football fanatics. It's College Football with Sam here. Couldn't go live Tuesday, and then some things came up Wednesday and Thursday. I had to help my family up north with our house that we're actually trying to sell up there. So we had to go up and just check some things out. We don't have air conditioning up there, so we want to get that fixed before selling the place. But that's why we couldn't go live yesterday. But today we are live, and the next time we will be live is Sunday, and then Monday, and then Wednesday next week at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Nice to see a fellow YouTuber and friend of mine, GT Sports, pop in. How are you doing? Looks like he's my first viewer for this stream. And as we get several more pouring in, that will be great because we are going to be talking about a few things tonight. Ohio State's path to go back-to-back, if USC's recruiting is sustainable, what Jonathan Smith needs to do at Michigan State to keep his job. I also want to give you how many wins I think each Big Ten team needs to be considered for the at-large playoff conversation. And then last and, of course, not least, I want to discuss my SEC predictions. They weren't finished when I showcased them. Don't know why that happened, but oh well. Won't happen again, or at least I'll try my hardest to not let something like that happen again. But they are finished now. That's for sure. So I'm going to go through my SEC predictions yet again, then answer the 4 questions that I wanted to get to on Wednesday that I didn't have the time to do because I had a hard out at 8 that I had to hit. So make sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and stay tuned because this is going to be a blast. And if you want to ask me a question or show support to the channel, just anything of that regard, send a super chat and I'll answer it instantaneously. One more thing too, if you do want to ask me a question and have it be made into a video, you can just join my Discord server, which is totally free, navigate to the hashtag YouTube mailbox channel, and type in a bold prediction or ask me a question there. Just and anything related to football. Bold prediction or asking me a question about what I think about maybe a player, a position group, a team, and I will answer it 100%. Helps me. It honestly helps me create content and also kind of engage with my audience and know what they like. Helps keep me humble a little bit and is also very fun and rewarding to do. So please join the Discord server, navigate to the hashtag YouTube mailbox channel, do those things. And the Discord server is link in the description. And actually, just for convenience sake, I always forget to do this. I'm going to have to create like a pinned comment for all of my live shows that, gives certain links I want. But it's pinned right now. Just click that. You join the Discord server. It's just that simple. Some housekeeping rules I want to talk about before we really dive into it. Baylor is recruiting at a high level. Texas Tech is recruiting at a high level. There are a lot of schools that, as a friend of the channel says, but we don't cuss here on College Football with Sam, at least often. Try not to. So I'm not going to say verbatim what he said. But in his own words, Baylor and Texas Tech are just saying F it to NIL go. And then you have some schools like Oklahoma, Auburn, Ohio State, who are being a little bit more cautious with it. And then obviously you have, Michigan. I can only assume A&M, Georgia, and USC are also kind of saying screw it because their classes are huge. They have a lot of high quality. Some people were telling me they don't believe that Georgia's class is that expensive, but they already have 27 commits and a great QB in Jared Curtis. And what if they get Tyler Atkinson? And they're about to get a 5-star tight end in Caden Protho, probably tomorrow, or I forget if maybe he announces tonight. Sometime in the next 24, 36 hours, they're probably going to get him. That would put them nearly at 30 commits with one of the highest average ranks per recruit in the entire country. And they may even get the number 1 class if they earn, let's say, those 2 commits and retain everyone else. It's crazy. But I especially brought up some of the bigger schools that are being more conservative and putting it in a total juxtaposition with smaller schools that are being very aggressive. Right now, Baylor has a higher average rank per recruit than Oklahoma does. They have more commits, 16 to Oklahoma's 15, and their average rank per recruit is closer to an 89 overall than Oklahoma's is. Pretty close, pretty neck and neck, but Baylor is ahead. It's the same thing, by the way, with Texas Tech, who Baylor surpassed today, because Baylor, while they don't have a player of Felix Ojo's caliber, they have several top 100 players. They have a better class than Texas Tech, but then again, Texas Tech also has a better class than Oklahoma. It's interesting. And obviously Auburn, pretty well documented that their recruiting right now is suffering, to say the least. They have the 78th ranked class, and their average is almost below an 88 overall. So they're getting commits from some players that I don't think were their priority players in the 2026 cycle at first. And sorry if I keep reaching up to itch my nose. I don't know what's going on there, but want to deal with it before we get to the main segments tonight. Regardless of that, when I look at these new rules and NIL Go and trying to enforce these new deals, I see a environment of college football that is still chaotic. I see more parity than ever before, and I have to tell you guys, this is what parity is. That's what parity is. Parity is Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Michigan State have worse recruiting classes than Texas Tech and Baylor. That's what parity is. And I'll put parity in quotes because under the current rules, there's always going to be cheating as long as there's no collective bargaining agreement. Why do I look so orange? Why do I look like that? Oh, well. We'll just deal with it. I don't know exactly why, but and yeah, Rambo, I see that Corn Crazed is coming back live tonight. I'm gonna watch that actually. We're only going live for an hour because I have get together with a friend, and also I do want to listen to the Corn Crazed segment. Why am I colored in like that? That's weird. I think it might be the shirt that I'm wearing. Oh, well, I don't think it'll bother too many people. I mean, do you guys notice that? Where I kind of look like I've eaten too many carrots? I'm like the character from House MD who is literally colored orange in the clinic. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about. But maybe I'm being too self-conscious. Is it that bad? Is it? I don't know. I'm just gonna continue. I don't think it really matters that much. I don't think people will think, oh, he's too orange. I'm not gonna listen to his college football content. But anyway, Baylor, Texas Tech, Syracuse is a good class right now. Not in terms of quality, but they do have some blue chippers. BYU is a good class. SMU's class is pretty solid in quality. I mean, they took recruits that Ohio State, Oklahoma, and Michigan wanted. Washington's recruiting class, pretty darn impressive. Obviously, Florida, Penn State, Texas, Tennessee, Clemson, Florida State, Oregon, Miami, Michigan, LSU, Ohio State, Alabama, Notre Dame, A&M, Georgia, and USC. Those are your top 16 classes, and those are all to be expected. I mean, even Florida State, while not expected to be top 10, is expected to be somewhere in the top 20. And alas, they are. But I mean, you're even seeing UCLA have 23 commits, 5 4-stars, 18 3-stars, and they're closing in on that 88 overall average. You're no longer seeing the super classes of the past where, say in 2021, both Ohio State and Alabama signed recruiting classes where their average rank per commit was like a 94 or above. You're not going to see that ever again unless there's a school like let's say Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, USC, Georgia, Alabama, Penn State, a school that can bankroll at the highest level and they're having success. My money there would be like USC. If USC ever begins to play like at the level they were under Pete Carroll with the current buy-in they have and under the current rules, it's discovered that, yeah, there are really no salary cap restrictions, then I could see USC sign a superclass like that. Maybe if Miami gets back to the playoffs and has success. Texas last season, along with Oregon, was the closest to signing a class like that. So maybe Texas. I mean, maybe Oregon. I mean, Oregon signed a very impressive class in terms of quality last year. They're close to a 94 right now. It helps when the classes are smaller. The recruiting classes used to be smaller than they are now. Obviously, you have to get more commits to compensate for the outgoing production in the transfer portal. But let's get to my SEC predictions. Jiri Corto says Atkinson is going to Oregon with Deuce Geralds. Yeah, I mean, if they get Deuce Geralds, which Oregon's predicted to get, and if they get Atkinson, that would bring Oregon up to 16 commits. It would be an awesome class on defense because I know that they already have Jet Washington. They got Emmanuel Iheanacho on the offensive line along with Tommy Tofi. So it's a strong offensive line class, I would say, right now. They already have 3 O-line commits, and they have 2 tackles inside the top 100 overall. It would once again be one of those maybe smaller classes, but extremely awesome in terms of quality. And Oregon doesn't lose a lot of guys to the portal relative to some of these other top-end programs. But let's get on to it, and I want to talk about my SEC regular season and postseason predictions with brevity. And talking about the playoff as well, how I think everything will shake out, some more specific predictions for each of these teams. Let's just get right into it. How do you think the SEC will shake out in the 2025 season? Tell me down in the comments section below. Leave a comment. Inform me of your SEC predictions, and I will do my best to respond to them. And I'm going to give you in this segment, regular season and postseason predictions. So not just what I think will happen in the 12-game regular season, but on SEC Championship Saturday, and in the college football playoffs, I will give you those records and those details. So let's just dive in and get right to it, honestly. So first and foremost, I think that the SEC is more similar to the Big 12 than the ACC or the Big 10 in terms of hierarchy. I genuinely believe that. Obviously, the SEC is way more talented than the Big 12. In terms of talent, the SEC and the Big 10 are closer to each other than any of them are to the ACC or the Big 12, especially the Big 12. The ACC is closer to the Big 10 and SEC than the Big 12 in terms of talent. But I'm talking about in terms of the hierarchy structure. The Big 12 is very much compressed together. Now, I don't think necessarily anyone can win the league in the Big 12, but there's a lot of teams who theoretically can. There are only a few teams in the Big 12 that could probably win a playoff game, but that's a different discussion. We'll talk about the Big 12 next week in one of my segments where I give these record predictions with brevity. There will be an SEC predictions video sometime in August or later this month where I go through and I give a documented, not deep dive, those are different segments, but I dedicate a slide to each team. We're just going through these and giving my predictions and what I think will happen on these schedules, and that's really it here. But the point I'm trying to make is you have a bottom, but the bottom of the SEC can be pretty competitive with the top of the SEC in the way that you don't see with the ACC or Big 10, but you only see with the Big 12. And while only a handful of teams in the SEC can win it all, I think just like the Big 10, there's a little bit of a larger quantity of them. Like there's just more of them than in the Big 10 or any other conference in theory, especially if you care mostly about talent. I think the Big 10 just personally has some better coaching and is better at roster retention. I think part of that's also because they're wealthier. The Big 10 is, now that universities can pay, now that alumni can get involved in the payment and booster process and it's all legal. The Big 10 has an advantage there that I think can correlate with having a coaching advantage to pay for them and also to be able to pay players to come back. However, the SEC still recruits the best. The SEC is a lot of good coaching, a lot of elite development. We see this especially with, I think, Georgia, Texas, Alabama. We have seen some elite recruiting here and there with Florida, A&M, Auburn, LSU. We saw Ole Miss use the portal in an elite way. And more importantly than having a good amount of teams who can win it all in theory, you have a lot of teams who I think in practice can win the SEC if certain things go their way. So I think that Arkansas, Kentucky, and Mississippi State are dead this year. I just want to paint the picture for you there. So Arkansas and Kentucky I have going winless in SEC play. Now maybe that's bold, but Arkansas, they play Alabama A&M, Arkansas State, Ole Miss and Memphis on the road, Notre Dame, Tennessee on the road off a bye, Texas A&M, Auburn, Mississippi State. Off the Week 11 bye, they play at LSU, at Texas, and hosting Missouri. All of those teams except for Mississippi State, Arkansas State, Alabama A&M, and maybe Memphis are significantly better than Arkansas in the power ratings. And they just don't get a break outside of weeks 1 and week 2. They don't go a week without playing someone in a super challenging spot. And they bring back Taylon Green and Bobby Petrino, but there's no energy around the program. I mean, the way Josh Pate summarized his thoughts on Arkansas initially was a sigh and then kind of a man, I don't know. It's just not good stuff. So I'm not touching Arkansas with a 100-foot pole. And then for Kentucky, it's pretty similar. I think Kentucky's more talented than Arkansas. I think they're better than Arkansas. But they do have more QB questions, and the QB disproportionately matters more. Kentucky, they have more QB questions. Arkansas at least has a good QB. And Kentucky, they play Toledo, but then they get Ole Miss. Ole Miss is not going to overlook them. Kentucky could win because they should get better and Ole Miss should get worse. But still, it's a tough spot. Then Eastern Michigan. Then off the Week 4 bye, at South Carolina and at Georgia back-to-back. Yikes. Off the Week 7 bye, they host Texas, Tennessee, play at Auburn, host Florida, got Tennessee Tech at home, play at Vanderbilt, and Louisville. Louisville's not a layup. It's not. Louisville right now is a better program than Kentucky. So I think Kentucky as of right now, and I could change this because I could see him beating Ole Miss, I could see him beating Vanderbilt. I have him for now going 3-9, 0-8 in SEC play. I think that Kentucky and Arkansas are just dead meat. And then Mississippi State is for different reasons. I don't think that Jeff Lebby is necessarily on this type of hot seat, but I do think that he inherited a rough situation. And I have Mississippi State losing to Arizona State non-con. I have them beating Arkansas on the road because I think Arkansas is going to quit. I think after that many losses, and I'm predicting Arkansas to lose every game from week 3 on out, they'll eventually fire Pittman. The team will implode. It'll have to be a total factory reset for the Razorbacks. But outside of beating Arkansas and Southern Miss and Alcorn State, and they could lose to Southern Miss easily with Charles Huff and all he's bringing in over there from Marshall. I have no idea why Marshall fired him, but I digress. Those programs are in rough positions. And then I don't think anyone is fancying Vanderbilt at 7-6. 2-6, that's my prediction for them. It's a common prediction for them. They return a lot, but I don't think anyone is fancying Vanderbilt as a team that is going to do big things this year. They might produce an upset or two, but reach the college football playoff, heck no. Win the SEC, even more so. In fact, I'll ramp it up a bit. Hell no. They're not reaching the SEC championship. They're not going to go to Atlanta. I do have Vanderbilt winning all their non-con games and then beating Auburn in kind of an upset fashion, and then Kentucky off the Week 12 bye. They could beat anyone on their schedule in my mind except for Texas, but they're not going to beat everyone on their schedule except for Texas. They're going to find some games to lose in the same way that I think they'll find some upsets to earn. It's a total chaos team right there. It's a team that is not going to play for the SEC championship or play for the playoffs or national championship, but they could easily stop someone from doing so. So Vanderbilt's going to be a fun watch this year. Now we're getting into the fun stuff. The fun stuff is in all these teams from here on out, I think, could theoretically win the SEC if things go their way, or at least reach the playoffs. Some of these teams, like Oklahoma and Florida, with their tough schedules, a lot would have to go their way for them to even reach Atlanta because they're probably guaranteed at least 2 conference losses, if not 3, in my mind. And they have some they have some issues, whether it's on their roster or I think for Florida, their head coach's game management, that could hold them back. But they also have a lot going for them. I mean, Oklahoma and Florida could be top 10 power-rated teams easily this year. I'm a guy from the North. I'm a Big Ten guy, and I'm saying that. So let's start off with LSU, who I have tied at 9th, 7-6, 4-4. They're much better than that, but I think that Brian Kelly is done. I think when you look at the schedule, they have another week one opener. Kelly's team start off slow. They're not good in week one openers, and they're returning less than their opponent on the road in Clemson. That is a nightmarish matchup in my mind for LSU. Then they play Louisiana Tech. They play Florida. They play Southeastern Louisiana. At Ole Miss, I think Ole Miss on the road is likely a loss in that rivalry game, and it is a rivalry game. Many following the channel probably may not be familiar with that because I used to be a Big Ten channel for the most part, trying to branch out here. That is a rivalry game, and these teams under Kelly and under Kiffin especially have been pretty equal whenever they face off. Ole Miss was much better than LSU last year, but when they played each other, it's a pretty back and forth affair, and the home team usually wins. Ole Miss has enough good players to where I think they would beat LSU. Then they play South Carolina off the bye, at Vanderbilt, A&M at home, Alabama off the Week 10 bye, Arkansas, Western Kentucky, and at Oklahoma Week 14. I think in addition to the non-conference Clemson game, they drop Ole Miss, A&M, Alabama, and Oklahoma. You beat LA Tech, Florida, Southeastern Louisiana, South Carolina, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, and Western Kentucky. My question is, if they are 5-3 entering the Week 10 bye, like I think they will be, is Brian Kelly fired? Because at 5-3 with that schedule, you are not reaching the playoffs unless somehow you sneak into the SEC championship game and win, because they're not letting a 4-loss LSU with that schedule in the playoffs. That's not happening. I don't know. But I will say in my prediction here on the right-hand column on your screen, I do think Brian Kelly, in addition to Sam Pittman, are definitely fired. Stoops could be canned, and then I think one of Billy Napier and Brent Venables, one of them could also be canned. But more likely than not, if it's, Pittman and Kelly, I think. And then also potentially Mark Stoops with the season I think they'll have. South Carolina, I have 8-5, 4-4, and I have LSU losing to Syracuse in their bowl game. I just think with Kelly being fired that Syracuse will show up. I have that game being the Gasparilla Bowl. I think Syracuse will just show up because Fran Brown will still be their head coach. Vanderbilt I have playing in the Game Above Sports Bowl because I don't have enough Big Ten teams fulfilling the bowl requirement. So Vanderbilt has to go somewhere. They're 6-6. I have them beating a MAC team in that game. Just almost skipped over it. South Carolina I have going 8-5, 4-4. I love Lenoris Sellers. I think he's the second best QB in all of college football, only behind Cade Klubnik, quarterback at Clemson, South Carolina's biggest rival. I have them losing to Clemson, but I have them winning the rest of their non-con games, Virginia Tech, South Carolina State, and Coastal Carolina. And in conference, I have South Carolina beating Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Oklahoma, and Alabama, all at home. All of their conference road games, Missouri, LSU, Ole Miss, and A&M, I have South Carolina losing. Now, that could be pretty simplistic. Clemson's a home loss because I think Clemson is better than anyone else South Carolina plays at home by a mile. And Clemson has not lost. They haven't lost at South Carolina in, I think, over a decade now. I think the last time they lost was 2013 or 12, one of those years. 13 would have been the last time they played at South Carolina using the odd, even, that type of system. You all know what I'm talking about. I have South Carolina in their bowl game matching up against Virginia as a nightmarish matchup, absolutely easy, even if Lenoris Sellers decides to go to the NFL draft after his redshirt sophomore season, which he would be eligible. In the Birmingham Bowl, I think South Carolina would win that pretty convincingly. Florida at 8-5, 4-4, exact same record as last season. I think that when you look at Florida, they have a lot of untapped potential. Their coaching staff, with Billy Napier, is their biggest question mark. I think that Lagway's good. I love the players they have on the O-line and on the D-line. Absolutely love them. I mean, you got, Caleb Banks and Tyreek Sapp on that D-line, and then I think Jake Slaughter's the best center in all of college football. Trench play matters. Then you add in a quarterback who's big, physical, has a powerful arm, makes everything look easy. I mean, there's a reality where I think they win 9 games. But, maybe even 10. but a lot has to go right with them because coaching does matter. And I think that opening up with LIU and USF allows you to kind of ease into things, but at LSU on the road is going to be tough. At Miami will be tough. Texas and Georgia are still more talented than you, and A&M on the road will be tough. I have them losing to LSU, Texas, at Texas A&M and Georgia, along with Miami in the non-con. And in addition to their, LIU and USF weaker non-conference opponents, I have them beating Mississippi State, Kentucky and Ole Miss on the road, Tennessee, and then Florida State. And I have them playing TCU in their postseason game, and that game will be in the Liberty Bowl. Pretty intriguing matchup there. I would favor Florida pretty heavily, given that Lagway won't be eligible to opt out. So unless he's injured, he's going to be playing in that game. I think a lot of Florida players would play in that game, perhaps, especially Lagway, and he'll be the most impactful player for the Gators this year. We have next Oklahoma, who I have going 9-4, along with 4 other SEC schools. There's going to be a lot of cannibalization in this conference, in my mind. Oklahoma has the toughest schedule, I think, in the SEC, perhaps the toughest in college football. Illinois State, Michigan, at Temple, Auburn, and then off the Week 5 bye, you get Kent State Week 6. Yes, I do think they enter that Texas game undefeated. Or if they're going to lose to anyone in that first 5 games, it's probably Michigan. I think you beat Auburn for sure. I'd favor you against Michigan, too. You're likely 5-0, 4-1 entering the Texas game. I will say, though, based on the build of this team, they're not ready to be national championship contenders. They're just not. The O-line will get better, but how much better, I don't know. John Mateer stank against competition that had similar talent to Wazoo, or better. And their wide receivers, while healthy, aren't as deep as they were in 2023. And when you look at Oklahoma's talent level, they're closer to the middle of the pack talent-wise than the top. I mean, Texas, Georgia, Texas A&M, Alabama are more talented than they are. Tennessee has been more established in recent memory than Oklahoma has. Ole Miss and Missouri have done more than Oklahoma has with less. And Florida has out-recruited them recently. In South Carolina, Lenora Sellers, definitely a better quarterback than John Mateer, in my opinion. So Texas, and then Alabama on the road, and then I think Tennessee and South Carolina on the road are going to be losses. I think this team will struggle on the road with kind of the improved offense, but still some situational questions on offense. I do think they go undefeated at home, though. I think the only team that can maybe stop that, honestly, is Michigan or maybe LSU if LSU plays to their potential. But I do have them winning all their home games this year, going 8-4 regular season. That includes wins over Ole Miss, Missouri, LSU, and I have them playing Michigan State in the Music City Bowl and winning that game. Now moving on to Missouri. Missouri, the law of close games says they're going to regress, and they don't return a bunch of production, but I think they've done well in the portal. I like the addition of Bo Pribula, and I love their offensive line. Connor Collison's one of the best in America. He is. He's, I think, one of the best centers in the country. Caden Green's one of the best guards. I love the additions of, Johnny Williams IV, Kevin Coleman on, offensive tackle, wide receiver. I like their defensive line, the addition of Damon Wilson, pairing him with Zion Young. Their schedule, more importantly, is easy. They start off the year Central Arkansas, Kansas, Louisiana, South Carolina, and UMass. I think they win all 5 of those games. Off the Week 7 bye, they host Alabama. Get Alabama off a bye and you host them. You play Auburn on the road Week 8, at Vanderbilt Week 9. Off the Week 10 bye, A&M and Mississippi State back-to-back at home, and then at Oklahoma and at Arkansas back-to-back. I think Missouri beats everyone except for Alabama, Auburn, and Oklahoma, who I have pegged as losses. Will beat a good South Carolina and A&M team, though, and win all their non-conference games. I think they face off against the talented, the hyped Texas Tech Red Raiders in the Texas Bowl, and I think they win that game because Texas Tech is, I think, a little bit older than Missouri and filled with players who I think will be mercenaries. So if they're not playing in the playoffs or if they didn't win the Big 12 championship game, I think for a bowl game, a lot of their better players will opt out. I can't necessarily say the same for Missouri, but Missouri's had opt-outs in the past. It's weird projecting bowl games. I'm just doing it for fun here. I have Ole Miss going 9-4, 5-3 in conference play. Ole Miss will go exactly the same in the regular season as they did last year, but their power rating will be infinitely lower. For example, I do think they start off beating Georgia State, beating Kentucky, Arkansas, Tulane, LSU, and Washington State, which is kind of an intriguing non-conference game in Week 7. However, instead of Ole Miss blowing out Georgia, I think Georgia will blow them out this year in Week 8. And I don't think they'll fare very well on the road at Oklahoma in Week 9. South Carolina at home Week 10 should be a win, same with the Citadel Week 11. I think Florida has the better roster than Ole Miss, and they beat them last year. So with Florida getting better and Ole Miss getting worse in the power ratings, why couldn't Florida travel to Oxford and win that game? And then off the Week 13 bye, I think they'll beat Mississippi State on the road. I have them. Surprise, surprise, this is a team I'm pretty low on this year, although high in the long run. I have them playing Notre Dame in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Still have Notre Dame winning, 9 games and definitely being a top 15 power-rated team. But losing 3 games with, it's the same thing with the SEC and some of these other conferences. Losing 3 games doesn't sound like much, but in the era of super conferences, where some teams get these disproportionately easier schedules at the same time they're good, means you have a lot more teams that win 10 games and 9 games than ever before. So it kind of diminishes the standing, which is why you have a team like Ole Miss and also Notre Dame matching up in such a lower quality bowl. Maybe that prediction's way too bold, but I think Ole Miss would lose that game. Tennessee, 9-4, 5-3. I'm going to keep it simple, going to keep it sweet, since I already released my Tennessee record predictions video. The Volunteers, I think, will win close games against anyone not named Georgia or Alabama or anyone not on the road who has similar talent to them. So I think they lose to Georgia, Alabama, probably those two by a pretty good margin, then I think they lose to Florida as well. But they beat Syracuse, East Tennessee, UAB, Mississippi State, Arkansas, Kentucky, Oklahoma, New Mexico State, and Vanderbilt. And in their bowl game, I have them projected to face off against the Nebraska Cornhuskers in the ReliaQuest Bowl. I think Nebraska would win that one. We have Alabama and Auburn. Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, and Auburn, by the way, are all tied for 4th, all with 5-3 conference records. Same with Missouri. Oklahoma, Florida, South Carolina, LSU are 4-4. So, again, a lot of cannibalization. And you see number 3 A&M's the only team with a 6-2 record, and then Texas and Georgia have 7-1 records. We'll get to them in a little bit. Alabama and Auburn I want to pair together because they're rivals. They're both from Alabama. And I think there's a lot of similarities here. So Auburn's caught up to Alabama in terms of recruiting. I mean, they have made massive strides there. And I think that Auburn and Alabama share something in common in that their coaches are very good at punching above their weight class. We've seen Hugh Freeze play Georgia competitively for 2 years in a row, play Alabama competitively for 2 years in a row, should have beaten Alabama in 23 with Harsin's players, which was pretty impressive. We've seen Kalen DeBoer at Washington, beat Oregon and Dan Lanning 3 times. We've seen him beat Steve Sarkisian twice. We saw him just coach circles around Kirby Smart for 3 quarters last season. But then we've seen Alabama fail to do the little things, and they miss the playoffs. And we've seen Auburn fail to do the little things, but that means they don't go bowling or they just finish 500 because they don't yet have Alabama's talent. I think that both of these coaches are very good schemers, but I think that for whatever reason, there's something missing right now from them fitting in with their program like, a perfectly made puzzle, I guess. The puzzle pieces aren't quite fitting right. For Alabama, I think it's that DeBoer right now does not have an Alabama quality assistant staff. And for Auburn, I think that the missing piece right now is Jackson Arnold and the fact that Hugh Freeze is on a limited timetable. And I think DeBoer's a way better coach than Hugh Freeze as well. I mean, Freeze is very, very up and down. I don't think you know what you get out of him. I think you know what you get out of Kalen DeBoer. Yes, there's some playing down to your competition, but there's also DeBoer shows out in big games, and he's shown that at Washington. He's also showcased that at Alabama in that Georgia game. I have them both going not 8-4. I have Auburn going 8-4 regular season, 5-3. Alabama going 9-3, 5-3 in the regular season. Ironically, for talking about winning big games, I don't have Alabama winning a big game this year. I have them beating Florida State, ULM, Wisconsin, Vanderbilt, Missouri, Tennessee, LSU, Oklahoma, Eastern Illinois. I mean, actually, Oklahoma could be a big game. Oklahoma will enter that game with 3 losses, and if they have 3 losses but beat Alabama and go 9-3, that's a team that can be in the at-large playoff discussion. But I have them losing to Georgia, South Carolina, and Auburn. I think it's Georgia's year to beat Alabama because they play them in Sanford. I think that this Alabama team is still suffering from some of the mediocre assistant coaching and development that was there during the later Saban era. And by development, don't confuse that with where you're picked in the NFL. A lot of that stuff can be predetermined out of high school, the measurables, your genetic potential. I'm talking about, making sure that with the number 1 talent roster, you're doing a better job of competing for national championships and living up to the standard you've set than they did. And they just didn't do that in 2022. And in 2021 and 2023, they had some kind of glaringly weird inconsistencies for the talent they had. I still think Alabama's suffering from that a little bit. And that doesn't help against Georgia and doesn't help against a team like Auburn, who's strong in the trenches, and I would say really strong everywhere except for QB. And I think Freeze can make up for that a little bit, especially since Arnold's athletic. And then Lenora Sellers is a freak athlete, and South Carolina still has players on defense. For Auburn, I have them starting out off 2-3. At Baylor, loss, Ball State, South Alabama, and then I think those are obviously wins, but at Oklahoma and at A&M, that's tough. I, however, think they match up pretty well with Georgia. They have the receivers to target Georgia's secondary, and they have the trench play to hold their own against the Bulldogs. So I pick that as my upset win. Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky I have as wins. I see Arkansas dropping one of Missouri, Arkansas, or Vanderbilt. I chose Vanderbilt, but I see them dropping one of those games because I think that Freeze is that coach who, again, you don't exactly know what you're getting out of him. They'll beat Mercer, and I also have them picking an upset game over Alabama. It's just Alabama has not dominated Auburn in Jordan Hare in ages. I don't think that's going to start this year when Alabama, in terms of its recruiting profile, is either staying level or even declining a little bit, and Auburn is continuing to rise there. Not talking about their 2026 class, guys, because that has no bearing on this year. Talking about what they've brought in. A&M, Texas, and Georgia, I all have making the college football playoff. All of them. And A&M will go on the road. I have them facing USC in my projections. Texas and Georgia will get first-round byes. So, as of right now, I don't have any SEC team hosting a first-round game. Now, that could change. And if there is going to be a team that I will pick to make the playoffs in addition to those three, because I think those three are close to locks, well, Texas and Georgia are. A&M not quite, but A&M I think is closer to a lock than anyone else in the SEC besides those two because their schedule is easier, and I like how they match up against Notre Dame, Florida, LSU, South Carolina, and I think they have a puncher's chance against Texas. Getting just two of those wins and beating all of the teams you should beat puts them in that discussion. And they're preseason top 10 for a reason. They bring back over 70% of their production. It's impressive. It would be Alabama, though, next. And Alabama's a higher ceiling than A&M. I also do think they have a lower floor, though. So those things could change. But I have A&M actually starting out 8-0. Beating UTSA, Utah State, Notre Dame, Auburn, Mississippi State, Florida, at Arkansas, at LSU. Off the bye, I do have them losing to Missouri. I think between one of LSU and Missouri, they lose. They'll beat South Carolina, they'll beat Sanford. They'll already be a lock to reach the playoffs by the time they play at Texas Week 14. It'll be competitive. It'll be a rivalry game. I think it will be clear in that game that Texas is better, but I think A&M will play them tighter because there's a decent chance that Elko might be a better game manager than Sark, and A&M has the experience edge. And as of right now, I would say is the better O-line, and that matters a lot. But I have, because it's a road game, and because I think Texas is that far ahead in talent, and look, Sark is 3 years over Elko in terms of building his program, so I have that pegged as a loss. And I do have them losing at USC. Even though I think A&M power ratings-wise will be better than USC, they have to travel all that way across the country. And I think USC is one of these teams that will get better as the year goes on. Because the more games they have with DeAnton Lynn, I think the nastier the defense gets. And the more games Maeva has to settle in, I think the better as well. Be a close game, but a loss. Could be a win, though. I think A&M's one of these teams that, if they go 11-1, I don't think anyone should be surprised with the depth they have, how they've recruited, and Elko's track record. Texas and Georgia have tied for first, both going 11-2 in the regular season, plus championship week, 7-1 in conference. Georgia will have the lower floor. Texas will have the higher floor and higher ceiling, but Georgia's game day coaching is better, so I expect Georgia to show out better in the big games. That's why I have them beating Texas twice again. Could be wrong there, and Texas matches up better with Georgia this year than they did last year, but Georgia I also think will be much better on offense this year in terms of maintaining a balance than they were last year. Won't be so up and down. You won't have the ceiling Beck provided in the passing game at times, but the receivers will be better. I think the rushing attack will be better as well. Stockton's legs, plus I think some better health, at least from a probabilistic standpoint at running back. I have Texas beating everyone on their schedule, so Ohio State, San Jose State, UTEP, Sam Houston, at Florida, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt, Arkansas, and A&M. Have them only losing to Georgia on the road, and Georgia again in the SEC championship game. Georgia, I have them beating Marshall, Austin Peay, Tennessee, Alabama, Kentucky, Ole Miss, Florida, Mississippi State, Texas, and Charlotte. I have them losing at Auburn and Georgia Tech, neutral field. I think between Auburn, Florida, and Georgia Tech, they drop one or two of those games. I don't see them actually losing to Texas or Alabama in the same way as any of those three games. I just think that Georgia does. The preview magazines are correct in the sense that Georgia has some roster limitations that I think with a tough schedule like this will come to bite them against, Georgia Tech when you haven't had a bye in a little bit, or Auburn sandwiched, in between Kentucky and Ole Miss, and after you probably get an emotional win over Alabama, and it's on the road in a hostile environment. I do think there are 1 to 2 losses likely against inferior competition that hit Georgia, but Texas and Alabama could also beat them in Sanford. I can see that for sure. And then I have them beating Texas for the SEC championship game. Both will be top 4 teams in my final rankings, 4 for Texas and 3 for Georgia respectively. I have Clemson ranked second, Penn State projected to be ranked number 1. Texas will be matched up against 5-seed Miami in the Cotton Bowl. They'll win that game, but lose to Penn State in the Peach Bowl. I have Georgia beating Indiana in the Sugar Bowl. I think Indiana will play them competitively because I think Cignetti is a really good staff and is also a, Saban disciple. And I think he carries a lot of those attributes to Indiana the way that Smart does to Georgia. But Georgia's just so much more talented, bigger, stronger, more athletic. So I think Georgia would eventually wear Indiana down and win that Sugar Bowl convincingly. They would also, in my estimation, move on from the Sugar Bowl to play Clemson in the Fiesta Bowl. Now, I think Clemson is a better quality team than Georgia. I think that Fiesta Bowl would look a lot like the Orange Bowl last year, where Penn State's a better quality team than Notre Dame, more well-rounded, has the better odds roster-wise to win it all, but they just get out-coached by Notre Dame, and they don't have that same type of toughness that Notre Dame had in that game, whether for a variety of reasons. I don't exactly know why. But that's kind of how I envision the Clemson-Georgia game going, is Clemson uses the outside to kind of outpace Georgia maybe early because Georgia won't face the type of outside talent and cohesiveness and just timeliness between Klubnik and his receivers that they'll face with anyone else throughout the year. So that'll take some adjusting. But I think that Georgia will win in the trenches, unlike the Orange Bowl last year where the loser won in the trenches. Penn State won there. Notre Dame actually won on the outside and won the turnover battle. At least, did they win the turnover battle? I forget, but I think you see the point. Clemson's the better power-rated team in my estimation, but Georgia is just deeper in certain positions that matter for game control. D-line, they could have similar talent on the O-line if it all pans out well, and they actually have better running back room. And I think Kirby Smart's a much better game manager than Dabo Swinney. So I have them winning the Fiesta Bowl against Clemson, but I have them losing to Penn State in the national championship game. Franklin's a far inferior coach to Smart, but he has better coordinators, more experienced roster. And you guys know my thoughts on Penn State if you've watched my channel. I think that Penn State's going to be, at the end of the year, significantly better than the field, to a point where it won't matter if Franklin hasn't changed his game management ways. They're just going to be that good as Knowles gets more snaps with the defense, as Kotelnicki, entering year 2 with Aller, who could be round 1, pick 1. Those receivers for Penn State, they have 3 of them, possibly 4 with Denmark. It's just going to be a really hard team to stop. Very hard. But I think the SEC goes back to the national championship game. I have Georgia winning the SEC and then marching their way to the title game. And I think Texas receives a first-round bye too. A&M reaches the playoffs for the first time. It'll be very historic. Alabama could make the playoffs, but I think between one of Georgia, Texas, Oregon, Alabama, and Ohio State, and I'd even throw in Notre Dame there, I think at least 2 of those teams, if not perhaps more, are just missing the playoffs altogether due to how much experience they're losing. And then Alabama returns more, but they were the worst out of those teams last season at the end. Just some broken things there. So those are my SEC regular season and postseason predictions. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know again in the comments section below how you think the SEC will play out. As of right now, I think the best 2 programs by a significant margin in the SEC are Georgia and Texas. Now, I love Kalen DeBoer. I almost picked Alabama, almost said Washington there. I almost picked Alabama to win it all in 2024, then backed off on that. Thank goodness I did. I sided with Georgia, which was incorrect, but Georgia at least won the SEC and made the playoffs, getting the number 2 overall seed. And I think if they survived that Notre Dame game, with how Smart manages games, they then could have went on to win it all. Wouldn't have been the favorites. Ohio State was better, but you get the point. I love Kalen DeBoer, and that conflicts with my prediction for Alabama, but I just think there are some missing pieces that need to be found for them to move on and have success. All right, that's done. Now we can get on to some of these other topics. Before we do that, though, oh my goodness, we have some super chats to get to. So let's do this. Let's pop these out and let's highlight them, because I like doing that if I can. I like highlighting my super chats. So thank you, Blue Wolverine, and thank you, Isaiah Cox, for the combined $15.10 in super chats. I very much appreciate it. Just wait for a minute so I can pull these up. Okay. So Blue Wolverine with the $13.10 super chat. Go blue to you, Blue Wolverine. Thank you for the donation. And yes, I don't try to, do this very often on the channel because, the goal here is objectivity. And I want to be objective. I mean, speaking of Michigan, Ohio State's going to be better than Michigan this year. And yet I'm also picking Michigan to win. The best team. Whoa. Are you kidding me? Holy cow. Why, thank you. I don't even know what to say. But yeah, go Blue Wolverine. I was saying, anyway, I think Ohio State's better than Michigan this year, but I'm also picking Michigan to win. And for any of you doubting my objectivity, I've picked Ohio State 75% of the time over the past 5 years to win the game. So, I usually don't talk about 13-10 all that much in the funny, hilarious way, because I don't want to, make Buckeye fans mad or bring up bad memories. However, I'll make an exception here, just because he brought it up. That was one of the best days of my college football Michigan fan life. It was so, you know what it is, and maybe I could even make a video about it. It was so incredible, so incredible to watch that game. Before I get to that, though, Isaiah Cox, thank you for the $2 super chat. I believe in Indiana again. Oh, I believe in Indiana too. I have them winning a playoff game and getting a home playoff game. And Blue Wolverine, holy cow, thank you for the $99 super chat. That's crazy. That's the best super chat I've ever received on the channel. I will keep up the hard work. We've been live 4 times this week. None of the lives have gone exactly how I wanted them to either. I've wanted to talk about more content for each live, but whether I haven't had the time or the energy, at least I'm doing it here. And this has actually been, I think, these past few days have been the most success that I've had on YouTube and the most fun as well in several months, even dating to before last season ended. It's probably the most fun I've had on YouTube since I'd say the 2024 preseason. And I think this regular season will be more entertaining because I have some better strategies. But thank you, Blue Wolverine, for the $100 super chat. I really appreciate it. As DeMoney5675 says, damn, I couldn't believe that was sent. That's crazy. I could absolutely not believe that. Is this a true live or a premiere pre-recorded live, asks Blue Wolverine. It's a true live. It may sound a little bit automated because that's my voice. I kind of sound robotic, but none of my lives are premieres, and it will tell you like in this little inconvenient place, like typically if you're on your phone scrolling, it'll show you whether it's live or if it's a premiere. What are the chances if Michigan State finally beats Michigan for the first time since 21? It sparks the hatred the rivals once had for each other in the late 2010s. It's a better chance than a lot of people admit, and actually for a bit there I was picking Michigan to lose that game, but I backed off of it because I think Michigan's talent edge over Michigan State in terms of like recruiting edge is probably the widest it's been in a minute. And Michigan is also, they haven't had the same type of roster staff turnover from Harbaugh to Moore that State had from Tucker to Smith. I do think it's a close game, though. I think that Michigan, I wouldn't be shocked if myself, while watching that game, and when I watch games, it's very clear I'm a Michigan fan. You won't get that from my talk here. Some will accuse me of it because, maybe I pick Michigan to beat Ohio State, or this year I'm picking them to go to Indy when I'm not picking Ohio State to. But that actually has more to do with my objective brain thinking if I couldn't trust Day last year, why would I trust him this year when Michigan gets better, for example? But I'm full on blue and maize and blue pom-poms when watching games. I just don't show that on here because it's not respectful. It's not fair to everyone else for me to go full Michigan fan when I'm on air. It's just not fair. But when watching, or even was I'm getting way off track here. I think that I will be very tight and very glued to the TV during that game. I don't think it will be a blowout. It won't be like the last time Michigan came to East Lansing where they just destroyed MSU and you knew from the first quarter what it was going to be. It's not going to be that way. It'll be a lot like last season where Michigan will win, but Michigan State will be in it, and they'll have a chance to win, and I could see them easily proving me wrong. Do you have certain days / streams you do Q&As on stream? Asked DeMoney5675. No, I just usually try and not answer questions unless it's a super chat because I have a lot to get to. So right now, I have 4 more topics to get to, and I'm probably going to be live until 8, and that is when I may have a friend who's I'm supposed to meet him up at 8. So it's probably not wise of me to be answering all these questions, but there were super chats sent and I'm obligated to answer those. For the Q&As, your comment that wasn't paid, I'll answer it when I have the time, but super chats get massive priority because this along with another part-time job I have, and this is almost a full-time gig at this point, if not. That is my work. This is my work here. So I have to incentivize answering, people who want to support the channel. I have to. Maybe it sounds wrong for me to say that, but other channels won't tell you that. But I'm going to be honest with you in my business strategies or my predictions or my thoughts, even if I don't think they're popular. For example, I think Michigan's wide receiver room is terrible. But I also think that Ohio State's O-line is one of the most overrated positions in football. Those two opinions would make probably half of my subscribers get a little bit uncomfortable, if not very angry. But I will tell you how I think it is, and if I'm very, very wrong, like I was with Florida State last year or Michigan, I will quickly course correct. Cole Werbridge, even though I'm a Buckeye fan, I appreciate how much content you put out and love listening. You put out so much content. Yes, I do. But thanks to doing it almost all live and having a graphic designer help me and a good editing system, I actually get like a day or two or sometimes even 3 days off per week while putting out this much content. And then I can work on other things. And, you know, this channel's paid for my tuition. I don't know how much of you know that, but until this past few semesters, I didn't get any financial aid, or if it was like pitiful amounts. And this channel paid for my tuition at the University of Michigan, which is somewhat crazy. I wish it paid more, but it's a starting place for sure. Again, thank you, Blue Wolverine, for the $99 super chat, for the 1310 super chat. I'm gonna talk about 1310 for 5 minutes, just because. So I said earlier that was one of the best days in my life as a Michigan fan. From a college football standpoint, that game sucked. That was one of the worst games I've ever watched. You know, you have Will Howard, who looked like he was Will Howard back in 2020 when he couldn't pass and they only relied on him to run because he was scrambling everywhere, did a good job evading sacks, but he could not throw. He just couldn't do it. And then you had Davis Warren, who threw for 68 yards, 2 picks, like 15 pass attempts. It's just awful quality game. It was so bad. I mean, both teams Michigan had double the field goals as touchdowns, and Ohio State had triple the field goal attempts that they did touchdowns. Crazy low quality game. But because I was a Michigan fan, because I was involved, and because I didn't think Michigan was going to play Ohio State within 30 points, it was entertaining. And I was texting some friends, and I've had the pleasure of meeting some like wonderful people through college football with Sam. And one of my friends is just raging out at me because he picked Ohio State to do like really well in cover. And he told me before the half, he's like, I don't know if Ohio State's going to win. Because if they keep running into Michigan, he agreed with the text I sent where I'm like, you know, Michigan's going to get in their head if Ohio State doesn't stop running the ball. And that is when the talent advantage just goes out the window. And all that matters now is, can the starters stay healthy? And can Michigan just put together enough plays to put pressure on Ohio State? And he agreed and said, look, I don't know if they win. And entering halftime, I thought to myself, well, you know, it was a fun story, but at the end of the day, Michigan's going to get destroyed. And then the third quarter rolls around, and Ohio State doesn't put any points on the board. And then we get to the fourth quarter, and Ohio State fans in the stadium, it's not even like 2022, where they were restless and they could feel like a loss was coming. This was despair, where it felt like the entire stadium was about ready to turn on the Ohio State team. And Ohio State just kind of looked, I don't know. It just, the team looked broken. They looked helpless and broken. Like, I vividly remember the Jack Sawyer pick and how emotional that was. And teams get that emotional, especially in rivalry games. But the emotion that came from, like, the Ohio State team in that moment was an emotion of, like, yeah, we proved it to you, Michigan, that, like, we're just as... It came across as almost desperate and insecure in hindsight, which is... Look, Ohio State won it all because they were as tough as nails. And that's what I don't like about the whole, Ohio State's actually not that tough discourse. Is Ohio State's been tough, I would say, every year since 2022. In 2021, I don't think they were at all, given the talent they had. But since Jim Knowles got there and since Day lost to Michigan, I mean, the first thing they did was make sure they were tougher. toughness has not been the reason why they've lost any of their games since 2022. It's been either because of development or recruiting deficiencies, or it's because Day gets in his own head. And last year, it was actually both. It was Day for calling that game, along with Chip Kelly on offense, but then it was the fact that they had allowed Justin Fry to recruit and develop the way he did on the O-line. The fact that Ohio State, and this is what made it fun for me, the fact that they were even capable of losing such a game, even with the bad game plan, I thought was hilarious. Because if you're Ohio State, from my perspective, I respect Ohio State. I like Ohio State. I think they're this juggernaut program. I wish that Michigan was as consistent as Ohio State was. Like, straight up, I wish that. But the fact that they could lose even with that game plan gave me hope in the sense that, oh my gosh, the talent disparity in some ways isn't even big at all. Like, think of Michigan. Michigan's O-line was the better O-line in that game, and I didn't think that was possible. I mean, by November of last season, I thought to myself, even with injuries, Ohio State's O-line's better, because Michigan can't pass block. Even if Ohio State can't run block, at least they can pass block. And in that game, Michigan gave up no pressures to Jim Knowles' defense, and Ohio State gave up like 20. It was a lot, if I'm being honest, like the SEC championship game between Georgia and Texas the week after, where Texas owned the outside, but Georgia was just so dominant in the trenches and honestly came with the better game plan to the point where they won. They eked out a win even though, in a certain sense, they should have been the losing team. That is what 13 that's what 13-10 was. Honestly. It was beautiful because I didn't expect to win, because I got to watch my team, while they sucked, beat the best team that my rival has fielded since 2019. And if you take that out, that may have been the second best Ohio State team of the 21st century. And yeah, it's like what Blue Wolverine said. It made no sense. I couldn't believe what I was watching. Like, when the first quarter ended, I'm asking myself, why is Ohio State running so much? Like, it made no sense. No Michigan DB could cover Jeremiah Smith without, like, pulling his neck down and committing PI. They couldn't cover him. They couldn't cover Carnell Tate. They couldn't cover any of Ohio State's receivers. And yet Ohio State decides that we would rather eat cat litter than pass on first or second down. It was insane. And then because they couldn't run, it made every third down an obvious passing down, which with the Michigan pass rush and the Ohio State O-line, you have to get the ball out quickly. And that resulted in some of those turnovers. Let me read some more comments. Oh, I feel bad for you, Cole. What a terrible day. OSU lost and my grandpa died. That sucks. That sucks. My grandpa isn't exactly in the best of health either. And don't worry, for any of you watching, don't worry. We're getting back to being on topic here relatively soon. Probably in the next few minutes here. We're going to go through a blitz of some questions, take anywhere from 5-10 minutes to answer some of those questions. We joke he couldn't stand watching Day lose to Michigan again. Wow. Crazy stuff, man. You know, I think Day will get a win over Michigan again. I don't think it'll be this year, and the popular narrative seems to be it'll be this year because he has to. I think it's 2026 when Bowen has an extra year with the O-line, and in theory that entire O-line minus a Nainwa should come back. Then I will think that's a Joe Moore Award caliber unit. And Michigan loses like 5 defensive linemen entering 2026. And with how Michigan's recruited, unless Esposito really is one of the nation's best D-line developers, and Michigan gets 3D tackle portals who gel well, I don't see Michigan having the traditional advantages they've had over the past 4 years, and I think 5, including this one in 2026. I don't see that. It's in Columbus, and that Ohio State team is a tough schedule, but they'll have a lot of depth that year too if they can pay their players to come back. I don't like that year for Michigan. Even though I think they'll be a better quality team than this year, they're going to be facing a tougher schedule, and Michigan's identity has been more on the defensive side of the ball and running the ball than receiver and QB. And Michigan gets better, much better at receiver and QB in 26, but they lose their center, they lose their best guard, they lose much of their D-line, all four of their two deep linebackers, and I just, Day's a good enough coach to where at some point he's going to beat Michigan again. Honestly. I mean, maybe against Michigan he will be John Cooper 2.0 because it clearly is in his head. And the Ohio State fan base doesn't help because they expect to beat Michigan all the time. And Day's a guy who's emotionally receptive. So some coaches don't watch media, or they watch media explicitly to motivate their players. I think Day watches media because he's a kind of a normal person. And maybe I'm wrong there. But his emotions are a strength where he can really motivate his team to come out on fire. They can also be reasons why he gets in his head. And I wonder, did winning the national title really make it easier to play Michigan? Or is it, just the same? I don't know. We'll figure out a lot of these things in 2025. Who else starts instead of Bryce? LOL. No one. Quarterback and wide receiver will get better because Bryce will be older, the receivers will be older, but Michigan will have to I think Michigan, based on their roster, will have to change identity in 2026 if they want to maximize their potential. Michigan in 2026 will have to score more points to win than this team will, because this team will be much better on the front seven, at least from what I think. And yes, I do think Bryce starts right away. If he doesn't, the season's immediately a failure. If he doesn't start immediately, then either Keene or Garcia is really good. We know from film that's not true. If he doesn't start right away, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I would lose faith in the program if he doesn't start right away. That's just me, though. Let me see any other comments we have. We used to watch games together pre-2019, and those OSU score routes and 40 to 50 points made me stop doing that quickly. Oh, in reference to you can't watch games with your brother. Yeah, I have a hard time watching games with other people. I get way too emotionally involved. I go into analysis mode and start, hyper commenting all the time. You guys probably know from me doing play-by-play, and occasionally I start rambling about different statistics or what I think I'm seeing on screen. Anyway, though, I think we're boring some viewers. They don't like that we're going off topic here. So let me quickly check my phone to make sure I'm not over time. And then if we're not over time, I'm going to get back to the segment. So I'll be right back. Okay, we're all good. So, let's move on here. Sorry for those of you watching where maybe I got off topic for a little bit there. But, yeah. Let's move on. And thank you again, Blue Wolverine, and also to, almost forgot who sent the $2 super chat. Isaiah Cox, thank you for sending the $2 super chats. And Blue Wolverine now holds the record for the highest super chat here on College Football with Sam, previously held by Bald Father Betts, who is also a friend of the channel. You should check out his channel. Does great stuff. He is the only betting channel I will recommend to follow, because he just blows out college football spreads like it's nothing. Like, if you follow him, and you bet with like the fractional units that he uses, or if you can afford the money, the exact units he uses, you'll win money. It's like investing, and you'll get a positive return. That's how good he is. But anyway, let's move on and talk about how many wins does each Big Ten team need to reach the CFP and to really be in that at-large discussion here. If you are a Big Ten team and your goal is to reach the college football playoff through the at-large discussion, because let's face it, it's easier to get into the college football playoff than win the Big Ten or the SEC right now, how many wins do you need? Some teams will need 9, some 10, and some even 11, depending on the brand, which does play an impact, the talent, the power ratings, and the potential for power ratings to change in a positive way based on the strength of schedule. So we're going to be talking about that here, and let's dive right in and talk about how many wins each team needs to reach the CFP. This question was asked on my channel, by the way, so just quick shout out to my Discord server. Links in the description. Click on it, join it, navigate to the hashtag YouTube mailbox channel, and ask me a question or send me a bold prediction. Any of you can do it. It's totally free, and I will make it into a video. This question was asked by Hawkeyes Forever. Love my Iowa fans. So we're going to do this kind of sorting the Big Ten in terms of win totals. So Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon are tied for first with 10.5 wins in their preseason win total each. Michigan is fourth with 9.5 wins in their preseason win total. IU and Illinois are tied for fifth at 8.5. Nebraska, USC, Iowa, Washington are 7.5, tied for seventh. Minnesota's 11th with 6.5. Michigan State, Wisconsin, Rutgers, and UCLA are tied at 5.5. And then Maryland's at 4.5, and Northwestern and Purdue are at 3.5. So the teams at the top, because they're bigger brands, because they'll start power rated higher, and for Michigan, even though they have an easy schedule, they have a tough non-conference outing at Oklahoma. These teams, Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon, and Michigan, I think can go 9-3 and be in that at-large conversation. Now, I have said I don't think any more than one team with 3 losses is getting in this year's playoff. And if that one team is 3 losses, it will be a championship game participant. So I don't think a 9-3 team's getting in this year. But there is a world where I am wrong. And I think in that world where I am wrong, a Michigan, Oregon, Penn State, or Ohio State, because of their brand, preseason power ratings, the fact that Ohio State and Michigan play tough non-conference outings, Oregon and Penn State will just start high, and they have a lot of opportunities to play ranked regular season Big Ten teams, they can get in, or at least be in that conversation at 9-3. Now, Indiana and Illinois, I debated going back and forth, 11-1 or 10-2, but Indiana with their schedule, if they go 10-2 and lose to Oregon and Penn State, but play them competitively, they're probably in. Or they go 10-2 and lose to Iowa and Penn State, but beat Oregon, then they're definitely in because they'll beat one of those top teams. With Illinois, I may revert and say 11-1 might be necessary, but if they go 10-2 and let's say they lose to USC and Ohio State, or Indiana and Ohio State, but they beat USC, beat everyone else, including Duke in the non-con, who some think will win 8 or 9 games, could go to the ACC championship game, that'll be a good non-conference win. So there is a world, I think, where Illinois is in that conversation at 10-2. Same with USC, same with Iowa. Iowa, I would have put at 9-3, but they do not have the brand. They won't play the style of football to where even with a tough schedule, 9-3 will get them in. It's just not as tough as Wisconsin's or Oklahoma's or Florida's to where I can warrant them going 9-3 and see the committee even considering them. Washington, also 10-2. Same with Minnesota, same with Michigan State. Now, Rutgers and Wisconsin, I think, could be in the conversation at 9-3 because of how tough their schedules are. So Iowa gets Penn State, Oregon, and Indiana at home. Rutgers has the unfortunate pleasure of playing Ohio State on the road, and then Penn State at home. That's just to close out the year. Crazy stuff. And then they play Oregon at home. So they have a tougher 3-game stretch than Iowa does. And with where those games are placed and one of them's on the road, if they just play in those games competitively or win one of those games, they're totally in that conversation. It's the same thing with Wisconsin. I mean, if Wisconsin goes 9-3, I'm of the opinion that Indiana, Michigan, Alabama, Ohio State, and Oregon, all of whom Wisconsin play, are going to be top 15, if not top 10 teams this year. Going 9-3 means they may get 2 top 10 wins. I think Wisconsin's schedule is that tough. The SEC, most SEC teams have tougher schedules than most Big Ten teams. Wisconsin's the exception. There is a chance where Wisconsin's schedule pans out to where that's the toughest schedule in America, and not even an SEC team can match up with that, and only Florida and Oklahoma can even relate to the pain Wisconsin may have to go through. If the Badgers go 9-3, I'd go as far to say it's similar to Oklahoma and maybe even Florida. They go 9-3, they could just get in, and it could be just a done deal. I think UCLA has to go 10-2. Maryland's schedule is easy enough. Their preseason ranking will be low enough, and their brand is bad enough to where I think they have to go 11-1 to get into the conversation. If Maryland goes 10-2, it will feel very Indiana, with a loss to probably a mediocre team and a good team, or maybe just to 2 good teams, and at that point you leave them out. If they go 11-1, that will probably force the hand of the committee. Northwestern will have to go 10-2, and then Purdue, same scheduling deal as Rutgers and Wisconsin. They could go 9-3 because in playing, Notre Dame, and they play Ohio State, and I think they play between Michigan, Oregon, Penn State, I forget, but I think they play at least one of them or maybe 2. To go 9-3 means they beat a really good team, and they'd be in that conversation. So here are some contenders that can afford screw-ups and still make the playoffs. Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, and Oregon, mostly because of brand, or for Michigan and Ohio State, it's the non-conference slate. Some teams with super tough schedules that can go 9-3. Wisconsin, Rutgers, and Purdue. They deserve to be in if they go 9-3, unless the rest of the field is just that strong and better in power ratings. Teams with super light schedules who, Maryland is to go 11-1, but Indiana, Illinois, they can get in. Indiana and Illinois, I think, have light schedules in terms of what they need to do to get in the CFP. So Indiana, just play Penn State and Oregon somewhat competitively and win all your games like you did last year. Well, actually, that says super light schedules. I don't know if I'd say Indiana's a super light schedule. Michigan is a much lighter schedule than Indiana. But if Indiana just needs to go 10-2 to be in that conversation, then I think that a Curt Cignetti team with this talent facing off against anyone in their schedule not named Oregon and Penn State, the schedule then is relatively easy. I mean, if they go 10-2, all those teams, Indiana and Illinois at least have a reputation of winning last year, so that would help. For Maryland, I mean, a lot would say it's a fluke, depending on how that went. The most likely to make it from the Big Ten, to make the CFP in my mind, besides Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, and Michigan, because those are the top 4, I would peg USC, Indiana, Nebraska, and Illinois in that order with the next best odds. I think USC is being insanely slept on relative to win totals. I do not think they're a top 10 quality team, but I think their staff is really good. I think their schedule matches up well with their roster. I think IU will be a better quality team than USC, but I think their big games aren't quite as favorable, and USC is a better brand. So USC at 10-2 and Indiana at 10-2, if one of them has to stay out and one gets in, they're putting USC in. Nebraska has an easier schedule than USC or Indiana, in my mind. I'm just putting them lower than them because I don't think their roster is as good. And for Illinois, it's the same deal, and I think that Nebraska actually has a better roster than Illinois. But Illinois, Nebraska, Indiana, and USC, those along with the Big Four, I think have at least realistic odds to reach the playoffs. Could also mention Washington, but I think Washington, much like Michigan State, they could be sleepers with their staff and QBs, but they also have a lot going against them in either their schedule or some of their roster depth. That's how many wins I think all 18 Big Ten teams need to reach the college football playoff. Now, let's talk about Michigan State, and let's talk about Jonathan Smith. Oh, wow. My friend's about to be here in about to be here in a few minutes. Oh, well. I had a lot of time to go live. See y'all later. Have a good weekend. Thank you, Blue Wolverine, yet again. You have a good weekend as well, and go Blue to you. Okay, will Jonathan Smith get fired if Michigan State goes 5-7 or worse? So, my friend of the channel, in my Discord server, and through my Discord server, he asked me, his name's Balkan Bothers. Balkan Bothers asks, will Michigan State fire Jonathan Smith if he commands the Spartans to a 5-7 or worse record? Balkan Bothers is a friend of the channel, member of the Discord server. That's how he asked this question, by the way. Make sure to join my Discord server. It's totally free. Link in the description. Navigate to the hashtag YouTube Mailbox channel and give me a bold prediction of yours about anything college football, or you can ask a question about college football, and I will make a video out of it, much like I am with this topic here. So, will Michigan State fire Jonathan Smith? Will they change the coaching staff, hit the reset button if Michigan State goes 5-7 or worse? I am going to say it depends, but I'm going to lean towards yes. I want to say no, because I think that Smith's a really good coach and has a really good staff and has a really good plan in place. But with the new AD, with the lower buyout, the fact that I think Michigan State has more money running through its veins, more ice through its veins than they did under Alan Haller, at least after, the whole Tucker fiasco. I think that if Smith goes 5-7 or worse, if he goes worse than 5-7, yes, he's definitely fired with the new AD. 5-7, it depends on how the 5-7 works, but I think with the roster that Michigan State returns, with the quality of team they have, they should go 6-6 or 7-5. Both of those, I think 6-6 more likely than 5-7. 7-5, I think, is about just as likely as 5-7. So they should go bowling. If he goes bowling with this schedule, then I think he should be totally safe. So it's this weird thing where you go bowling, you're not in the hot seat at all. If you miss, you might be fired. It's a pretty strong, strong chasm between just one win. So when I observe Michigan State here, I look at their schedule. Western Michigan week 1, Boston College week 2, Youngstown State week 3, at USC week 4. They get a bye in week 5, and then from week 6 to week 10, at Nebraska, hosting UCLA, at Indiana, hosting Michigan, at Minnesota. Off their week 11 bye, they host Penn State, then they play at Iowa week 13, and they host Maryland in week 14. Well, technically it's a neutral field, but given that it's in Ford Field, it will be mostly Michigan State people there. I remember the Penn State Michigan State game in 2023 that was at Ford Field, mostly a Michigan State crowd. So that's like technically a home game off of campus. Still think it's stupid, but it's not a true neutral field. Michigan State went 5-7 last year, 3-6, and 2 of those losses were to Ohio State and Oregon. But they also lost to, Boston College and Illinois and Rutgers. And they also lost to Michigan and then Indiana. I don't fault them losing to Indiana, by the way. I mean, Indiana, I think, was better at beating the smaller teams than even Ohio State or Oregon was. Last year, they had a higher floor in small games than the Buckeyes or the Ducks did. And at times almost looked like they just were the better team overall against the Scrubs. But of course, their talent limited them severely when they played against the Oregons and Ohio States. Michigan State this season, you should beat your non-conference teams like a drum. You should be 3-0 entering USC, and if you don't, there are major concerns. USC is a winnable game, totally. Nebraska on the road is winnable. UCLA should be a win. Indiana, I think Indiana won't be winnable quite, but you never know. They could regress. Michigan, it's a rivalry game. It's winnable. Minnesota on the road, winnable. Penn State at home is tough. I wouldn't peg that as winnable, but it's a home game off a bye, and we saw what Michigan State did against Iowa last year off a bye, and they have a much better quality team this year. They can beat Iowa on the road, and they should beat Maryland. So, should beat UCLA, should beat Maryland, should go 3-0 your non-conference. You should have four or five guaranteed wins. And then between USC, Nebraska, Minnesota, and Iowa, I think you should win at least one, if not split. That leaves, 7-5, 6-6 is what Michigan State should go. And I like Aiden Childs. I have Aiden Childs as a top 20 quarterback this year. Love Aiden Childs. I also like Nick Marsh, Jack Velling. I think that Michigan State's offensive line with, Connor Moore and Matt Golbin is going to be pretty good. I like Grady Kelly and Jalen Thompson. I think they have some players on their defensive line and defense as well, like safety Nakai Martinez. This is a team that could go 9-3 if everything pans out for them in their last year's Indiana. They could go 10-2. They could also go 4-8, 5-7. There's a lot of potential outcomes for the Spartans, but they have enough opportunities on the schedule and a good enough staff in theory to where I think, if they go 5-7, it's not a guarantee that he's fired, but I think it's more likely than not where if they go 5-7 with this schedule, that will probably include some bad losses, or you don't beat any of the good teams. Unless they were to go 5-7 and play almost everyone competitively, and you clearly see they're better in power ratings, he would be gone, I think, if they do just as poorly as they did last year. They're 16th in returning production, and they're viewed as about a fifth of a point worse than the average team per S&P Plus in the preseason. But Michigan State doesn't have much recent history to go off of. If you remove the recent history from the S&P Plus, Michigan State would probably be viewed as better than the average FBS team. It's a tough Big Ten schedule. I have it ranked as the fourth toughest Big Ten conference schedule, but Michigan State should expect a 500 record out of Jonathan Smith. This team is too good. The staff is too good. I like their depth. I love their skill position this year, and I think their offensive line in year 2 versus year 1 is going to be night and day. Michigan State also in total defense, rushing defense, passing defense, was near the top 25 in a lot of those categories. Certainly inside the top 40 in almost all of them, if not all of them. The problem is the defense couldn't carry the team for the whole game, and their depth was limited. I think in year 2, you're going to see explosions on both sides of the football. If I don't see that, I will be sorely disappointed. Michigan State's a top 25, top 20 program. I think J-Bat knows that. He's aggressive, and there are plenty of coaches on the market who, at Michigan State within 2 years, could probably do better than 5-7. I just want to be careful, though. If Michigan State goes 5-7, 3-6 again, or maybe 5-7, 2-7, and Penn State's a GOAT caliber team, and Michigan's back to the 2021, 2022, 2023 teams, Indiana reloads. Let's say on the schedule, Michigan State's opponents, everything goes right for them. If they just, go 5-7, but they're more competitive, then I wouldn't support firing him. I still think Jonathan Smith is going to work in the long term at Michigan State. Good question. All right, now let's move on to what Ohio State needs to do to win it all. We'll move on to that. It looks like we got another. Did we get another super chat? I think we did. Anthony James G. Jonathan Smith has shown ability to build with less. That's my point. Absolutely. Yeah. He has the ability to do more with less. I mean, you're a USC fan. You've seen this. In 2022, USC had infinitely more talent than Oregon State did. And Oregon State, I think, only lost by 3 with their quarterback throwing it like 4 times to the Trojan defense. I mean, he built a physical monster at Oregon State. A physical monster. And by the way, guys, keep in tune on the live, because before we get out of here, there will be a USC question that I have to answer. And you all know, you USC fans, I have you guys winning double-digit games. I picked you to go 6-6, 5-7 last year. I was correct in the preseason. Now I abandoned that prediction mid-season and thought they were going to, sneak into the playoffs after the, really it was after the Michigan game. Just the way that it felt like a lot of things went lucky for Michigan, and yet USC almost won. I thought that was impressive, but it was a mirage. And then the Penn State game, the way you played that, I thought, oh yeah, this team will finish with 8 or 9 wins, and then they didn't. But stuff just happens like that. I think a lot's going to regress to the mean positively for USC this year. That's why I'm picking them to win double-digit games, for sure. And then the prior year, in 2023, I picked them to go, I think, 9-3 or 9-3, not 8-4. I picked them to go 9-3 though, and miss the playoffs and not even reach the Pac-12 championship game when everyone was picking them to win the Pac-12. And it was just, in my mind, Alex Grinch is trash, and they lost their best players on defense, and they lost the best players on their line, and their schedule's tougher. Like, there's no way that team is going to do well. So, weirdly enough, USC has been one of those teams that over the previous 2 seasons I've been pretty spot on about. Now, that doesn't really mean anything going forward, but I feel more positively about this team than I do the prior 2 teams. I think they're much better on defense. I think they're better coached. And Maiyava's a better quarterback than Moss. He isn't Caleb Williams, but he's better than Moss. And the 23 O-line had a lot of tough situations with it. A lot of regression. I think the 24 and 25 O-line, 25 O-line, if DJ Wingfield has eligibility, will be superior. Okay, let's move on, though, and talk about Ohio State and what their path is to win it all. What's Ohio State's path to win it all? Well, that is a question that one of my Buckeye friends has asked me. Buckeye Mike asks me, what is the path for Ohio State to win it all? For the Buckeyes to go back-to-back, I believe that Ohio State needs certain things to pan out in their way. And if you want to maximize the chances for them to win it all in 2026, coming off that 14-2, 7-2 record where they were national champions but still lost 2 games in the regular season and had some roster holes, I think that they want to have a lot to go right for them, especially since you look at their schedule and you see Texas week 1, Penn State week 10, and Michigan week 14. A lot can go right for those teams, and Penn State and Texas return more than Ohio State does. Thankfully, they're both at home. Ohio State should reach the playoffs at minus 320 odds. They're plus 190 favorites preseason to win the Big Ten. Number 1, the line of scrimmage play must be close to Ohio State's play at other positions. So the line of scrimmage must play close to its talent gap. They have to. The offensive line, therefore, improves significantly because last season, outside of when it was perfectly healthy, it was a weakness for the Buckeyes. And the defensive line, regression's inevitable. But in this scenario, for them to win it all again in 2025, regression only has to be, gosh, why are there errors here? Why does it say 2026, and why does it say must plays instead of must play? Let me see. Okay, that looks to be good, and that looks to be good. Hold on. I'm gonna pull a Pro Move Live, and I am going to edit the errors out of this because this is insane. Like, why is it doing this? I guess just so weird. So weird. Hey, what's up?
Hey, I'm here.
Okay, I'll be out shortly, like 10 minutes.
You want to hang out a bit and then run for a minute?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, don't come in for like 10 minutes, but I'll be out then. All right, see ya. That was my friend, and Corn Crazed is about to go live in 5 minutes. Gosh. This week just hasn't been my week, but the great thing about that, guys, is I've still gone live 4 times, and this week in terms of videos has been my most successful week. So the segments are doing very well. They're all getting a few thousand views each. So let me just change, like, all of this. There. That looks good. And then... there. Okay. So, again, sorry about that, but we're all back. Corn Crate's going live for the first time in forever. Told him you guys need to collab soon. Yeah, now that he's going live, I'm going to reach back out to him. I'll do that, like, I'll send him a super chat, like, to, you know, people have given me a lot this chat. I'm going to send him a super chat and say, hey, we need to collaborate soon on his show. Like, I'm going to do that no matter what. No matter what. So, okay, let's get into this, though. The path for Ohio State to win it all in 2025. The path for Ohio State to repeat as national champions, going back to back from winning it all with a 14-2 record in 2024 to winning it all again in 2025, is multifaceted. And I want to thank Buckeye Mike for asking this question. His question verbatim was just path for OSU to win it all. Just a brief text. Absolutely love it. If you want to ask me a question and have me answer it like I am Buckeye Mike's question, join my Discord server via the link in the description, navigate to the hashtag YouTube mailbox channel, and give me a bold prediction or ask me a question. If it fulfills those two qualifications, which are pretty easy in relationship to college football at least, I will make a video out of it. But the path is multifaceted here. So Ohio State, because of how much they lose, and because they play, you know, Penn State in Texas, and then Michigan on the road, week 14, Penn State's week 10 at home, Texas is at home week 1, and they'll have to play one of the better teams in the Big Ten in the Big Ten championship game, and they'll have to face a lot of top-tier opponents in the playoffs. A lot will have to go right for them with how much they lose. So the 5 main points that I came up with, I could have came up with more, but this is a, you know, Q&A session, really, type segment. So I thought brevity would serve us well here. The line of scrimmage must play close to its talent ceiling. That's number 1. So the O-line has to improve significantly from last year. Now, there won't be a Donovan Jackson or Josh Simmons on this line. I don't even know if Hinsman will be as good as McLaughlin. But how this line can improve significantly is it can avoid the meltdowns it did last year, where a player got hurt or they faced a little bit of adversity and they just got put in a blender almost instantaneously. The best O-lines, when they face that, they don't crumble like that. And that happened to Ohio State last year at multiple times. It can improve. It can do that. They return experience. I think they have a good coaching staff for their offensive line. It's possible. And to pair with that, the defensive line, they lose 4 starters. They lose a lot of size. They lose a lot of talent. The average star player rating from last year's D-line to this year's is going down a little bit, and Larry Johnson's recruiting has been more hit and miss recently. The D-line has to play to its ceiling too, which means regressing, but only by a little bit. Next up is, I think, much more realistic, and there's not a lot of negative here. Just Sayan needs to be a top 10 QB. Should be easy, given his talent, given Day's resume with quarterbacks, and I think there's a good chance Sayan could be better than that, for sure. He only needs to play at a Kyle McCord level with his supporting cast. Now, if reason number 1 ends up being, you know, the antithesis of what Ohio State needs, and somehow even worse than last year, the O-line and the defense massively drops off, well, maybe that won't be correct. But I thought 2023 Ohio State was one of the better teams in the nation that year. If they beat Michigan and Ann Arbor, they would have won it all. So I think with better receivers than McCord had, an equivalent tight end, an O-line that likely will be equivalent to that unit, maybe not have the same floor, but again won't have Simmons or Jackson. I think all he needs to be is a Kyle McCord, you know, top 10 QBR player with what he has on defense and the head coach he has. Number 3, the coordinators have to work out. Hartline can call plays with little assistance, and Patricia fits like a glove. That's what has to happen. He can call plays without much assistance. Should say without, not with. But even if he can call plays with, much assistance and there can be a collaborative effort, he just needs to work out. It can't only be Day both trying to game plan as a head coach and as an OC. He needs to contribute in some way. And then Patricia needs to fit like a glove. The DB room outside of Downs is at least good. So this doesn't mean corner has to improve from where it was last year, or that safety at, nickelback and strong safety has to totally rebound. They just have to be good, because Downs is elite enough to compensate for some things, and Ohio State has the talent there to where they should be good outside of Downs. Last but not least, everything else performs as expected. So wide receiver, number one group in America there, might be the number one group overall. Tight end could be the best tight end room in America. Linebacker, they could contend for that. Safety, certainly. And they brought in Jackson Corville, who's a good kicker as well. So if Corville, and then, Downs and McLean, Reese, Stiles, Peyton, Pierce, Max Clare, and then Innes, Tate, Graham, and especially Jeremiah Smith, if they all perform as we expect, which, means a lot of them improve to where they were last year, or they perform at the same level, that plus the prior four things coming true, that will get you Ohio State winning it all in 2025. Of course, with the asterisk there of like Penn State or Texas not turning into 2024 Georgia, because then more would have to happen. But they get those teams at home. They'll be better than Michigan, although they play Michigan on the road, but they'll still be better than them power ratings wise, which helps. Week 1, they play Texas, 2 Grambling State, 3 Ohio. Off the Week 4 bye, they play at Washington, host Minnesota. Back-to-back road trips at Illinois and Wisconsin, Week 7 and 8. That's tricky, but if these things pan out, they'll get through those games. Week 9, they get a bye. Week 10 against Penn State at home. They play at Purdue Week 11, host UCLA and Rutgers back-to-back Week 12 and 13, and then close out against Michigan Week 14 on the road in the game. Ohio State, I think, realistically is going to go anywhere from 9-3 to 11-1. Even if a lot of these things pan out, or all of them, I would still think that they're going to be a one-loss national champion. There's just enough losing, and then where the Texas game is at the point of the season, and with how much Penn State brings back, and the recent issues with Michigan, to where I don't think Ohio State would be a 16-0 national champion. If they repeat, you'd probably be, 14-2, 15-1, maybe 13-3. You get the point. I mean, maybe even 14-3 if they enter like with a 10-3 record. 10-2, reach Indy, lose in Indy, get a road game in the playoffs and go 4-0, which, with Day and just how insane he is in the playoffs, is definitely possible. But I think those would be the things that have to happen for Ohio State to go back-to-back, is the line of scrimmage reloads and offensively improves. So the line of scrimmage hits its ceiling. Sayin just plays to his talent level. The coordinators, their hirings play more towards the potential ceiling they have than the floor, or even than towards the average, because Ohio State's coordinators last year were pretty good. The DB room mostly maintains what it was last year, might get a little bit worse, but with Downs and then the other talent they have, they're still very good, still elite overall. And then everything else performs as expected. It's going to be hard to do, but it's hard to win the national championship, and Ohio State is one of those programs that can win it all, that can win it all every year. Even like a team like Penn State, who I have as my preseason number 1, I don't think can win it all every year. Maybe my mind will change on that, and having Jim Knowles as DC helps in that endeavor. But Ohio State's top 5 in talent. Day, I think, is the second best head coach in college football. He has a great staff. He knows what he's doing. Ohio State has resources, and they have the 2 best players in college football right now, in Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith. So they can absolutely win it all in 2025. The Ohio State Buckeyes can. Their path is to play to their ceiling at the positions that are the most concerning, to make sure their coordinators play, or not play, but coach at a great to elite level, so their coordinators go to their ceiling too, that Sayin just does what we think a 5-star quarterback should do, that the other known positions on Ohio State's roster function as expected. Nothing like the corner room from 23 to 24, where it was elite that year and then just good the following year, and you think, well, what happened there? Can't have any of that, especially when in the playoff now you got to play 3 or 4 games against top 10, top 5 teams in a row, and Indy is no longer a layup like it was when Urban Meyer was there, or in Day's first 2 years, or from 21 to 23 where Jim Harbaugh and Michigan went to the Big Ten championship game. And last but not least, we will talk about USC. Will USC maintain its current status as a riser in recruiting? Will the USC Trojans become a recruiting powerhouse? Or is this current recruiting class a flash in the pan like Texas A&M's was in, say, the 2022 class? This was a question asked by Drew Allerseason, and if you want to ask me a question or give a bold prediction, have me make a video out of it, join my Discord server, link in the description. It's free, doesn't sign you up for anything other than, notifications if you have those turned on for when I release videos, when I go live, or when, messages are sent. Just join that, navigate to the hashtag YouTube mailbox channel, and there you go. You will be able to ask me a question. I'll make a video out of it. So I want to talk about USC and why I think they have the number 1 class right now, obviously with 31 commits, and why I think this is a legitimate thing. Why I believe that. I mean, I believe in USC. I believe in Lincoln Riley and Chad Bowden and their staff, especially on defense. I've been very public about this. So I want to go through 10 reasons why I think USC is going to be a recruiting powerhouse from here on out, and why I think they're going to be successful under Lincoln Riley. So number 1 is their NIL advantage. The Trojans are top 10 in number of high net worth individuals, and they're in Los Angeles. This means that their NIL deals are going to have to be inflated to hit the market value that NIL Go views as legitimate, just because cost of living is more expensive out in LA, and not just that too, more importantly, just the amount of stardom and the amount of, money that's out there, and their top 10 in number of high net worth individuals as alumni. So what that means is they have thousands of alumni who are worth 30 million or more, some of whom are in the billions, hundreds of millions, just common Big Ten alumni, which is half a joke and half not when you look at Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, Northwestern, UCLA, and there are others for sure. Number 2 is they have a young head coach. Riley is still a young head coach, and he has a specialty. He has an X factor to him, and that's him being known as a QB guru. So that'll help him in QB and offensive recruiting. Kids want to play in a Lincoln Riley offense. And with what's going on with defense and the general management and all the changes he's made, I think this will make kids, no matter where they are, no matter what position they play, excited to play for Riley and to be in Los Angeles and to play home games in the Coliseum. Number 3 is the elite general manager. Chad Bowden helped Marcus Freeman build up Notre Dame. He should do the same at USC. He was great at Notre Dame. Now I think Notre Dame will still be great without him, but certainly helps USC to have a guy like Chad Bowden, manage the roster, work hand in hand with Lincoln Riley. And it's a good PR move for Riley, too, to bring someone of his caliber over from a rival. Number 4 is USC's location. They're in a talent-rich state, the talent-rich state of California, and now they have Big Ten pipelines. So Oregon, Washington, they got pipelines there. Pipelines in the Great Plains with Iowa and Nebraska, the Midwest, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Illinois. They've gotten some good players out of Ohio for the 2026 cycle. For example, they can recruit. We know that historically. And now they still have California. They've formed some relationships in the South, and they have better access outside of the West Coast due to their Big Ten membership. Number 5 is their blue blood history. Kids know about the Pete Carroll era. Why? Because their parents watched it. It's not that far back. It's far back from the standpoint of a fan or a current USC player or a current USC coach even, but it's within living memory for a lot of coaches, for a lot of parents of kids, and you can find highlights of it. USC can be dominant. It can be the mecca of college football. That helps in recruiting. And that gives you a higher floor and a much higher ceiling than most programs without blue blood status. Number 6 is D'Anton Lynn. Lynn is a huge reason why I believe in USC, not just their recruiting, but more so their development and capability to win games. Lynn is one of the best in the business, and kids will want to play for him. You know, he will turn kids on defense into young men. He will turn them into beasts. He will turn them into big, fast, athletic, high IQ players. And if you don't fit or check one of those boxes, well, you won't be able to do what you got to do in this new USC defense. This isn't the Alex Grinch defense anymore, which was weak, lame, all about speed and sacks. You either got a pick, you got a sack, or you gave up a 50-yard touchdown, or you just surrendered 300 yards rushing to a Washington team who couldn't run the ball all that well. Just saying, this isn't your typical Lincoln Riley defense anymore. That's going to help with recruiting on top of winning games and competing for titles. Same thing with the defensive staff. That's reason number 7. Eric Henderson, Sean Nua, Rob Ryan, Doug Belk are some of the best in their respective fields. And Trevon Reed, I wouldn't quite put him there, but he's younger, and he did a decent job at UCF. So there's a lot of youth, a lot of excitement, a lot of experience, and just proven talent on that coaching staff. That helps tremendously. Number 8 is that this is a feedback loop. The fact USC can land the number 1 class, land all these players, hold a class of 31 commits together, especially if they win this fall, that's going to pique kids' interests. They're going to think, how can they do this? What sets USC apart from these other schools that it's only they in Georgia that can bring in these super large classes and maintain all of them? It's going to get them to ask questions that are in favor of USC and maybe to the detriment of USC's competition because maybe they can't answer in the same way. Number 9, raising talent will make winning easier. So Lincoln Riley has already made USC's roster more talented than it was under Clay Helton, especially when you factor in development. Now, with Lynn and his staff being in year 2, and the 2025 class coming in, and they had some late additions that made it a top 15 class. And if they get this class on campus and can develop them as, you know, top 10 class in quality, could even be top 5, and the number 1 class overall, or at minimum, I would say top 2 or top 3, that's going to make winning easier. It'll raise their floor, it'll raise their ceiling, and I think, as I've mentioned in a prior video, that USC will develop this class well if they're able to hold on to it. And last but not least is reason number 10. Kind of tied in already with reason number 9, but there's already talent on the roster. So that's going to help USC win this fall. And just for those of you who want to know, and the link is at the top right corner of your screen at the beginning of the video. That's what you saw there. Just don't have the time to, pour through my videos and find where I tell you to click on the video. But it's there. It's my USC record prediction. I am winning double-digit games and going to the playoff because this team is talent. It's more talented than the Clay Helton teams already and certainly better coached, especially with this defensive staff. So I think under the new NIL rules, with USC's alignment with their boosters, with their off-field management staff, with their on-the-field game day coaching staff, with their athletic department, I love USC moving forward. I think this is going to be a top 5 recruiting program moving forward as long as Riley and this staff are there, which isn't a given with their current predicament, but if they win, it will be. And there'll be a top 5 recruiting program moving forward unless something massively changes in terms of NIL law. And even then, they have boosters, they have money, and LA is a fun place to be when USC is winning. I will actually say, under the current NIL rules, if the clearinghouse is as meaningless as I think it will be, USC will be the number 1 recruiting program moving forward, with maybe the exception of Georgia, just looking at how good of a recruiter Smart is and how he has Georgia aligned with his aggressive recruiting vision. That's it for today, guys. I have to go. I have to spend time with my friend. I'm going to get this USC video out. I don't know about tonight, but as quickly as possible. Thank you guys so much for watching, for sending all that super chat support. I really appreciate you guys a lot. Make sure to like the video, make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell. I will see you all very soon. Have a great day.